Hello everyone and welcome to a very helpful episode in the world of usually fixing and tinkering. Another subject on the basis of Ford Focus Mark 1s, although this can apply to every single car that is a car. Oh, dearie me. Take two. Hello everybody and welcome to an episode of Usually Fixing and Tinkering. Today we're going to look at batteries. A very, very exciting subject, but a subject really not understood by a lot of people. I will go over battery and starting systems, okay? It's quite important, and the best way we can start is directly with the battery and how that works and what batteries that you should buy for your Mark 1 more importantly. So, okie dokie, straight in there. Now, I have a couple of batteries here. An awful battery and a fantastic battery that has served me very well and is still going. Both these batteries are actually registering as quite, well, this one is quite healthy because it's only around a year old as far as I can make out. This is the battery that has come off Mr. Ink. And this was a battery I tried on Mr. Ink. This has been on 50 Shades for 7 years now. This is going on for way over 7 years as a battery, and it's just about on the wane, but it's got enough power to start the car, which is the most important thing with a battery. Has it got enough jungle juice to throw at the starter motor? Okay, now I'm going to debunk a couple of things here. So Mark 1s should use only 3 types of size of battery, okay? Now this is the incorrect size for Mark 1, realistically. Petrol, it should never be fitted. It's more of a battery you'd put on the diesels, but it's still not the correct size. This is a 100 size battery. So batteries go in a few different categories that people get confused by, and they go to Halfords, absolutely have no clue whatsoever, and then all Euro car parts, the Euro car parts special, and they buy either the run battery or sold the run battery for their needs, and you need to understand that, and it goes with every car, but there is a few things to note. So the size of the battery, okay, so on a Mark 1 it would either be an 063, an 075 or 110, which is fractionally bigger than this, okay. Those are your 3 sizes. I can't speak for other cars because it just varies on how big is the battery tray size, okay? Your battery tray size will dictate the size of your battery, not just in terms of length, but the height as well, because obviously now we have battery covers these days, so we need to know that the battery cover is actually going to cover and then clamp down on the battery tray below. Because no point in having a battery that's too tall. And the sizes, the standard sizes of batteries govern the height, the width and the length, okay? So it's important to get the right size. Secondly, cold cranking amps, okay? CCAs, okay? Cold cranking amps, that means how much jungle juice, how many amps it can throw at the starter motor in a starting situation, okay? So a car battery is a starting device, okay? It will throw electricity at the starter motor and it will start the car. Now the battery from then on is actually not really doing too much, and I'll explain that now. When the car starts, the alternator takes over. It's the alternator powering your electrics. Batteries don't power your electrics, the alternator does. The battery is merely a component in a negative earth circuit, where the battery will be charged by the alternator coming across the red cable, probably going to the starter motor on a Mark 1. The red cable goes to the starter and the same cable goes up to the positive terminal, which is this way round on a Mark 1, okay, on this side, and the negative side is strapped to the earth. The power is given through the battery, right, via the alternator. So the alternator provides the charge charging the battery, and the electrons will move from the negative side to the positive side through all the different cells, and it will come out the positive side up to the main fuse board to power all your electrics, where it will go to the main fuse board in the engine bay through your relays, your fuses, your rewirable fuses, the big bastard fuses, and then it will spread off into its different departments, whether it's powertrain, ECU, interior, you name it. Every single department, it will branch out into its subcategories and subsections. Okay, so there'll be usually two red cables that will go, usually two, but there could be something piggybacked to the positive terminal if some accessory has been added over the years. But that is how it works. Okay, now the battery is merely a way of transferring electricity to the vehicle from the alternator. Okay, and that is when the car is running. Now the alternator on very old cars without a smart charge control system will just keep charging the battery. Even if the battery is fully charged during a journey, it will still keep putting a voltage, usually something like 13.7 volts, something like that. Okay, and that is the minimum voltage that an alternator should supply. Now, with a Mark 1, it has a smart charge system, and people will say that word but don't actually know how it works. So the smart charge system is controlled by the ECU. The ECU will sense the voltage of this battery using an input to the ECU itself from the battery. It will sense the voltage, it will sense how charged this is, and if it senses that the battery is completely fully charged and there isn't a huge demand on the electrical system, it will switch the alternator off. It will literally just turn the alternator regulator straight off, and the alternator will not charge the battery. Now, you will not see that, okay, in any testing currents. Now, not a lot of people have got these USB ports that you stick into the 12-volt socket. I've got one so I can monitor the battery voltage. I can monitor voltage across the car. Okay, now the voltage is still going to show approximately 13.7. Okay, because that's the voltage going around the vehicle. Okay, at that particular time. Even when the alternator is switched off, it will produce that kind of voltage. It may drop down below. If it drops below 13.7, it's not always a cause for concern in Mark 1s, because that would probably indicate the alternator has been switched off by the ECU to conserve and not drain the engine. Because if the alternator is not working, it is not putting a strain on the drive belt, therefore it's not straining the engine, and your fuel economy goes up. And that's why cars all over the place now have some form of smart charge system. Mark 1s were probably one of the first Fords to use it, but I've got a feeling that the Mondeo might have used it, the Mondeo Mark 1, Mark 2. But obviously, when the voltage goes up, if the electrical demand goes up, like you put your, not heated screen, because let's say the car's been running, but that will be an example. If you were to put quite a few electrics on, including your headlights, there is a load on this battery, okay? And the battery will discharge quite quickly. Lead-acid batteries can discharge quite quickly, and it takes ages to charge them up again. So unfortunately, lead-acid batteries can have that characteristic. So immediately the ECU will sense the voltage drop around the battery and switch the alternator back on. Hey presto, we're charging again. And it will keep doing this. And Mark 1 owners will not know when it's happening. Okay, now I've got to be honest, motorway driving and consistent A-road driving is where this will be fully charged and the alternator won't be working. I've got a feeling that the majority of Mark 1 owners who drive their cars long distance, you know, for the majority of journeys that I've done on long distance, the alternator's not working. It's not actually switched on by the ECU, which is really important with getting the right alternators, because aftermarket alternators have to be calibrated for a smart charge system. Even though they should be if they match the parts number, but a lot of them don't have the voltage regulators to work with a smart charge system that is fitted to a Mark 1. So be very wary about that. But anyway, that is the principle of an alternator battery and starter motor. Now, obviously, the other thing is the construction, okay? So as well as CCAs, we've got amp hours, okay? So this is a 60 amp hour battery. 60 amp hours or 61 amp hours is a typical reading for an 075 battery, okay? That is basically, I'll say this quite principally, that reading of 60 amp hours basically means it's a rating given over a discharge period of 20 hours. So I've been on a journey, this battery is fully charged. I park up, but for some unknown reason, Andrew's got a lot of time on his hands and he wants to sit in the car and switch the radio on for 20 hours. Yeah, 20 hours of just listening to the radio. Now, basically, that reading is how long it will take the battery to discharge in 20 hours given a load on the battery. So let's say this radio, as it produces exactly a draw of 3 amps, right? Now, this is given in a rating depending on how many hours it's been discharged for, but 20 hours is the measurement. Now, to get 60 amp hours, that means that I need to be drawing 3 amps an hour for 20 hours. So that radio that's drawing 3 amps needs to be on for 20 hours for the battery to be dead. That'll be a new battery, by the way. An old battery would be far less, and I'll go into that in a second. So that's that measurement. So that amp hour rating is merely the amount of electrical draw that you can take from this battery when it's not being charged, okay? So generally, this is relative to the size of the battery. Like CCAs and amp hours go up with the size of the battery, okay? We have also got another reading. Obviously, it's a 12-volt battery, lead acid, but it's got calcium technology. Now, both these batteries are calcium. Yeah, this is a calcium battery as well. So basically, what it means is that with the general construction of a lead acid battery, you've got plates, okay? You've got 6 cells separated by lead plates, okay? And you have an electrolyte solution in each of the cells separated by these, well, you've got these individual plates going across, okay? You've got electrolyte solution, okay, between these plates. That is usually 1/3 sulfuric acid and 2/3 distilled water. You can use deionized, which this produces, but usually distilled, okay? And you can buy that from the shops, or you can produce it with a dehumidifier yourself. But that is if you've got an old battery that needs topping up. Now, I know a lot of classic cars where people want to have that period look, buy a battery with removable cells. Now, I can feel these cells, actually. They've been sealed up. This one is completely sealed. Actually, I can see the individual sealing going on here, but it's a sealed for life battery. 99% of batteries are sealed for life, maintenance free these days. It's only people who want them on classic cars that have to buy specialist batteries with the removable cells, and you used to top it up back in the day to top the electrolyte up. Yeah, that was a thing, because batteries back in the day, they used to leak like a sieve. They were really poor. Their casings were thin. This is a thick plastic casing to contain all this solution, okay? It is under somewhat of a pressure, especially when being charged. If any of you have had a battery being overcharged by an alternator, you will know the smell of rotting eggs. Believe you me, this stuff really stinks on the inside. So that's something to be aware of. But anyhow, this plastic casing keeps it in, and batteries have come a long way over the years, where the manufacturers now have got to the stage where they're producing really good quality casings just to keep everything in, and very rarely do you hear of electrolyte spillages. That's a massive movement forward in technology, I will say. But you've got this electrolyte solution, and it will basically, through a chemical reaction, which lead sulfate is part of that reaction, it's part of the solution. There'll be a chemical reaction when electricity is applied to the battery, okay? And it will move the flow of electrons taking it from the negative post across the battery to the positive post. All these lead plates are connected to these two. Okay, now as a word of warning here, now lead sulfate is a byproduct of the chemical reaction that happens in the battery with the electrolyte between the lead plates. Okay, so there is a technical term for this to describe two of the plates. One's a cathode, one's an anode. Okay, an anode I believe is the negative and a cathode is the positive. I think I've got that the right way around. Okay, but you'll have those two plates, a negative and a positive plate, and the solution will work from one to the other. And the idea is that the beauty of a battery is when it's charged, it performs a reaction for the solution to move from one side to the other and change its chemical properties and increase the flow of electricity. But on discharging, we've got to, well, basically on discharging the battery, the whole reaction is reversed. So the only way of reversing that is by charging it back up again. So it's a fantastic science experiment, put it that way, and it would take me ages to explain that. For the purposes of today, you just need to know that the flow of electrons goes from through each of the cells and comes out here. Okay, and it will usually be 2.1 volts. 2.1 volts times by 6 is 12.6 volts. That is a very healthy battery indeed. Okay, however, lead sulfate, these lead plates, when a battery is discharged and it not in use for a while, a lead acid battery, this covers this because only Mark 1s only use lead acid batteries, by the way. Okay, there is a realistic likelihood that in even a short period of discharge, those plates that aren't covered by the electrolyte, because the electrolyte is not having charge going through it, and what will happen is that that lead sulfate in that electrolyte solution will try and work its way to both plates, and it will stick to the plates, and it is lead crystals. They're just white crystal deposits. You may see this on really bad batteries where you see lead crystals forming on the terminals. We call it terminal corrosion. That is really, really bad. That means that lead sulfate has clung to the plates and it's rising and creeping up towards the terminals. That is a sign of a bad battery. Now, people say you can clean it off and the battery will work fine. Yeah, if you're lucky. But what will have happened is your battery would have been permanently damaged by the lead sulfate. Now, that lead sulfate can be removed. Well, it can be removed, one, by natural charging of the car, just using the car and using the battery, because it will give enough charge to maybe clean some of it off. But if it's really thick on those plates, you're going to need this device. Okay, you are going to need a smart charger. Now, this is a Halford's Advanced 12 amp smart workshop charger, and I've bought this about 4 months ago and it's been a godsend. Now, before, I've been using really basic smart chargers. They're very clever. They will sense the rating of the battery and they will charge the battery depending on the state of charge and its state of health, and it will work out how many amps it can blast out depending on what it puts out. Now, it was a 4 amp charger, so it took ages with a 4 amp charger. This is 12 amps, so it will indicate and it will work out what it needs to do with these batteries, and it will put enough voltage out to recharge a dead battery. This was dead in 4 hours and it'll be fully charged. But it also has one particular setting, and there's only a few chargers that do this. I think there's a particular Ring one that looks very similar. It's been out for years, and a C-Tech charger. Okay, those are the few chargers. I think Noco ones also. They have a desulfation setting. Now, desulfation is where I've explained lead crystals are stuck to those plates, and even with charging the battery, you have reduced the electricity flow across the battery, and the output of the battery through the positive post is far reduced. Okay, and it will affect your CCAs. Your CCAs will go down. Okay, now, lead crystals build up on the plates naturally as the batteries age. This battery, by the way, does not produce 550 ccas. It is 7 years old. It will have lead sulfate on the plate, sulfation. Okay, now this will clear minor to moderate sulfation on the plates. It has a desulfation setting, and it will shock that lead sulfate off the plates. It will basically go. I think the reason being, this is rated up to 12 amps. And what a 4 amp smart charger cannot do, and you won't find a 4 amp smart charger with desulfation setting, by the way, is because 4 amps is not enough to shock the lead off the plates. It will probably go up to 12 amps at some point, and I'll know this because it will say it on the screen. It will go up to 12 amps for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then it will go back down to 2 or 3 amps. Why? Because when it was charging at 12 amps, that was the desulfation setting. That 12 amps was enough to shock light to moderate lead sulfate off the plates and increase the electrical flow across the battery. That is why these are a godsend. They can resuscitate a battery that you think is dead, and it can keep it going, and I think it's done wonders with this. I think this was going in one direction, and it's still working, and it is still good enough to get me to shows in 50 Shades this year, because it will be very rarely used, but when it is used, it'll be fully charged and ready. This Lion battery still works until, well, for now, and it's a backup battery as far as I'm concerned. Now I've replaced it properly with an MK1 one, an MK1 075. You do have indicator eyes, okay? This will just tell you the state of charge. It's a very good device. Not every battery has them. The MK1 one on the car, on Mr. Inc, does not have that setting, but still, most batteries will encompass this, okay? So that's the importance of having a smart charger and one with a desulfation setting. If you have a battery with desulfation, lead crystals around the terminals, think about replacing the battery. I don't even think that would cure it, because if the lead sulfate has got as far as the terminals, that is severe sulfation, and not even this can deal with that. Unfortunately, it will touch the light stuff and the moderate stuff, but the rock hard stuff that is literally concrete against the plates, you're joking. So that's not going to happen. So now we've covered that. Mark 1s only use lead acid batteries, and by this stage, only the cheapest batteries on eBay will be pure lead acid. Now they've got calcium in. There is some calcium inside the electrolyte solution. I'm only assuming that will increase the charge and the lifespan of the electrolyte solution. And I've got a feeling calcium also reduces sulfation, which is always a good thing. And that's why the batteries of today generally last longer than back 20, 30 years ago. There have been some advances for the time being. But anyhow, on a Mark 1, you will have 3 types of batteries, depending on the size, and I'm going to give you some recommendations now. Okay. The first thing is, whatever size of battery you buy, whether an 063, 075 or 110, you must make sure it's got the maximum amount of ccas that you can possibly get from that battery. Now, I'll tell you now, an 075 battery, the most powerful 075 is a Yuasa 075, and it produces 620 ccas. That is going to literally, you just literally flick the key and the starter will flick the car into life. Whereas cheaper batteries will probably have about 500. So a cheap 075 from eBay, don't buy them. Only buy brands, okay? Halfords batteries are probably made by Varta as far as I'm aware. Don't buy Lion, okay? It's the one, Lion batteries for me are more fraud than eBay batteries, because Lion batteries are pretending and are sitting on the shelves of the most #1 known car parts retailer in the UK, and they are being branded as good, and they are not good at all. I'm sorry, this is brand awareness on that one. Bosch, Varta, MK1, Yuasa. Now, Yuasa, I used to be a fan of that very recently, especially with the one on Beatrix. But unfortunately with Yuasa, they tend to either fail within the first 6 months or last way beyond the 5-year guarantee up to 7, 8 years. So they either work immediately or they don't, or they last a long time. Basically, they fail straight away. So be careful of Yuasa. So I've actually switched to X-Side. So I've now got an X-Side battery for Ruby and an X-Side battery for Mr. Ink. I've no doubt this one will be replaced with another X-Side 075. So yeah, peace of mind, and it comes with a 4-year guarantee. Some batteries have a lifetime guarantee if you pay enough money. That's an interesting one. But as far as Mark 1s are concerned, those are the main batteries. There are a few other names. Lucas batteries I'm a bit dubious about, but apparently they're quite good. And that's really it. The X-Side battery I've got in Mr. Ink produces 600 CCAs. That is enough for a 2-litre petrol. You do not need a bigger battery than 075, okay? Now, the battery size in a Mark 1, there's 2 battery tray sizes. You've got the ones of the petrol that can fit probably a battery bigger than an 075, but you don't need a battery bigger than an 075. This is a toy-ridden, well, virtually toy-ridden, apart from xenon lights, maybe, I think, one other item, like alarms for a start. But apart from that, it's toy-ridden. And an 075 with 600 CCAs, 61 amp hours it's got, is more than enough for this car. The other thing... so diesels, they have a bigger battery tray than petrol Mark 1s, okay? And that is to house a much bigger battery. Now, I will tell you, this 100 battery, which is apparently down for Mark 1s because it will fit, yeah, of course. Now, it's got the same size as the 075, but look at the size. That's how much extra. Now, this battery will only just fit in a petrol battery tray for a Mark 1, okay? Now this has got 70 amp hours and 620 CCAs. So if you bought a powerful Yuasa, you're getting the same CCAs as one of these Lion batteries. That's how inefficient these things are. I think that's pretty poor for a battery its size. If you've got a diesel, so you have the bigger battery tray, you can go for 110, which may be fractionally wider. It may be fractionally tall. I don't think it's taller, but I think it's fractionally wider. That's it. Okay, a 110. Okay, probably the same width, same height, but a different length. Okay, that is what you need. Now, I can't really comment about the CCAs. Now, if you buy an 063 battery for your Mark 1, now I will say this. Mark 1 petrols, 1.4s, and 1.6s with either air conditioning or a heated screen, but not both of them. So if you've got a 1.6 and you've got one of those things, right, so aircon, heated screen, if you've only got one of them, then you can get away with an 063. If you've got a 1.6 with both aircon and heated screen, which is quite usual, you're going to have to go for an 075. You won't have enough jungle juice amp hour wise with an 063, okay? Now an 063, usually the most powerful ones will produce about 470 CCAs, which is good enough for a Mark 1 with a small 1.4, 1.6 petrol if you haven't got that much demand. And the amp hours, I think there'll be about 47 amp hours, but that's again most adequate as long as you haven't got the heated screen. If you've got the heated screen, I'll be looking at an 075, and even a basic 075. 550 for an 075 is this is a pretty standard battery sort of rating for an 075. So a run-of-the-mill, nothing massive. It's not 600. It's not the best, but it's not, you know, it's pretty standard. So this is what you'd expect off an 075, and that is for 1.6s with both aircon and heated screen, because I think personally, and this is why I say this, I'm sure there are Mark 1 owners going, well, I've got a 1.6 with both of them and I've got an 063, it's a small battery and it does me jobbing. Yeah, but I reckon when that battery gets old, and this is what happens when battery gets old, they don't charge as well. They lose their charge through natural desulfation over time, over the years. And what you're going to find is it may have produced, you know, 470 CCAs and probably 47 amp hours when it was new, but when it's a couple of years old, that's not going to be what it produces. And you're going to find out by using one of these battery testers. By the way, inside this smart charger is a battery testing setting as well. So if you buy one of these, you don't need one of these. But this is a 12-volt battery tester, and I'm going to show you exactly how to use it. You don't need to worry about which terminals you put on, okay? And this is going to prove this. So this is a 7-year-old battery. So check 12.2 volts, because I did charge it. Out the vehicle, regular flooded, CCA. Oh, it is 550. Yeah, we can just toddle down if we want to change the setting. Testing. There we go. Right, it will come up with two things. State of health, state of charge. So the state of charge is 35%. It's telling me to recharge, and the resistance is not good. 10 ohms of resistance, that is not good. A healthy battery should have as least resistance as possible, probably about 3 or 4 in resistance. The new battery measures that, about 3 or 4. And so 35% charge, yeah, 12.2 volts is about 35%, because 12 volts is dead, 0%, 12.6 fully charged. So you get the picture. So it's a third charged. But the state of health goes off the CCAs. So 100% health would be 550 for this battery, okay? But this produces 298, so that's 54%. Now, that is why you do not buy a battery that just about meets your needs. So if you have a heated screen and aircon in a Mark 1 1.6, you must get an 075 in charge, not an 063, because I can guarantee after 4, maybe if that 063 battery is still okay after 4 years, I don't think it will supply enough amp hours to the system to actually be an effective battery, put it that way, okay? And it won't produce enough CCAs. That will also go down. That 470 CCAs, well, based off this, it would barely make 200 CCAs. Now that's important. Most starter motors today, in most cars, will need 200 CCAs to start, okay? Now this battery produces 298, so we're just about in. This is a good battery because it still starts a car. It's not it's getting old, and it will probably after another 12 months possibly not even do 200, and that's when it ends, and I will recycle this battery, okay? So that's that. If we go over to the Line battery, we could do the same with this, and this is a much newer battery. It's only about a year old. I know that because this Mr. Ink was laid up for a couple of years, which I found out. Interesting. 12.37, so out the vehicle, CCA, right, we got to 620. Okay, that's the reading, 620. Good, recharge. There's a lot of resistance there. See, I'm not happy about that. Oh, no, sorry, not 14. It's 4, you idiot. 4 lots of resistance. That is actually quite a good battery. If it's got resistance between 3 to 5, that's ideal. Anything over, and it's probably getting a bit older. Now, resistance, by the way, the amount of resistance in a battery increases with desulfation and discharging, basically. So, yeah. That's what causes the high resistance there. State of charge, 65% because it's 12.39. State of health, 97%. 607 amps. Wow. So out of 620, we've got 607. So this is still a good battery. However, Lion batteries, there's one thing about these that give in. They pack up quite prematurely, and they can pack up with no notice. Okay, there will be a failure of one of the cells. Now that could probably be due to the lead plates being corroded. I've got a feeling that the lead plates will be quite thin in cheaper batteries, and they could corrode all the way through and leak between 2 cells. Failure of a cell or 2. That's possibly one. There's a few other reasons and technical reasons. Caravan batteries or deep cycle batteries, I think they're called B batteries. They are lead acid batteries but with thicker plates, so they can go into a fantastically deep discharge, unlike starter batteries for vehicles and cars, basically. So that is what you need to know. So 075, please, for 1.8 petrol and a 2 litre petrol and 075. But I would say with a Zetec engine, I would say the emphasis is try and get more than 550. You're looking at an Exide 075 battery. The Exide battery I bought was an Exide EA612. That produces 600 CCAs and 61 amp hours. That is more than enough for starting, okay? So you've got to consider CCAs. And as that battery ages, it will probably still have enough, you know, in good beyond the guarantee of 4 years. It will still probably be a 5-6 year old battery, I'm hoping, and it will still be perfectly fine like this has been. So bear that in mind. Diesel cars, I think diesels with their 110 sized batteries will usually, ideally, anything between 80 and 85 amp hours, please. You need a bit more electricity in them vehicles, okay? And CCAs, well, I can't really comment. I can't remember the CCAs off the top of my head, but the whatever size of battery, as long as you go for a known maker battery, so Exide, Yuasa, Bosch, they will produce excellent levels of CCA for that battery size. Please don't buy cheap batteries. It's just a lesson in that today. I think that's really all I've covered, really. So we've covered, you know, the need for smart chargers with a desulfation setting, how batteries desulfy, how they actually reduce their voltage in age because of the age and wear and tear of the lead plates, and the desulfying that naturally happens when a battery is discharged. Lead acid batteries, frustrating things. And I've got to be honest, I don't know why we are still hunking these massively heavy batteries around when 12 volt lithium ion batteries, I'm interested in that. These batteries are tiny. They're half the size of this 075, which would look a bit stupid in a lot of cars with the size of their battery boxes, especially a Mark 1. But 12 volt lithium ion batteries, they need to get cheap. They need to get cheap quick, because quite frankly, why on earth are we dealing with lead acid batteries in 2025, and why are we discussing it, I don't know. But what we have done, and what has happened over the time, the technology has improved over the years, and these batteries are capable of a lot. The original Ford Motorcraft batteries, they have a reputation for lasting a long time. The original one in 50 Shades lasted, I think, to when the car was 15 years of age. I've heard of one fail at 17 years of age just recently on a Mark II Focus. It's just ridiculous, these things. They are very, very durable. I think the quality of the plastic, the casing, the lead plates and the solution must have been extremely high quality, and if it is, it will just last a long time. However, Ford Motorcraft batteries weren't the most powerful, and an 075 Motorcraft battery would be lucky to get you 500 CCAs, which is really poor. It should be at least 550. So they weren't the most powerful, but they were the most durable, and that's what you can say. And if they're durable, and if they're capable of holding as much of that charge as possible for over the years, that's always a plus point. So yeah, but modern batteries are much better. Anyway, I will leave you be, and you take care, and I hope this has been useful, and it's given you some scope for what you need to look after your battery, especially in your Mark 1. Take care.